While the man was eating, he encountered a terrifying scene. The prison floor suddenly arched upward without warning. The unexpected situation scared him out of his wits. To his horror, a furry, unidentified object slowly emerged from the ground. The man was instantly so shocked that his mind went blank, overwhelmed by fear, thinking he had encountered a ghost. As he stood there, trembling with fear, he was astonished to discover that a person had crawled out from beneath the floor. It turned out that Abbé was the prisoner from the cell below, who had tirelessly dug a tunnel for 5 years. By a twist of fate, the tunnel led directly to Edmond's cell, as if it were all arranged by divine will. Abbé not only became Edmond's savior but also brought him immense wealth. Abbé eagerly invited Edmond to visit his cell. After 3 years of loneliness, Edmond finally had companionship and no longer had to count the stones on the walls out of boredom. When Edmond entered Abbé's cell, he was instantly amazed. The cell was like a luxurious suite, with a comfortable chair and shelves full of various books. Little did Edmond know, everything here was priceless and represented Abbé's lifetime of knowledge. Abbé promised to teach Edmond subjects like economics, mathematics, and philosophy if Edmond agreed to help him dig the tunnel. With nothing better to do, Edmond gladly agreed without hesitation, but just as they were about to begin their work, they suddenly heard the chilling sound of the guard's footsteps. Like a frightened rabbit, Edmond darted back to his cell and quickly prepared the trash bin, just in time before the guard arrived. The cell door opened only twice a day, once to collect trash and once to deliver dinner. The rest of the time, they were relatively safe and could work freely without fear of being discovered. Abbé cut off a lock of his hair, used sparks from a stone to ignite it, and lit a candle. Then they crawled into the tunnel and began their arduous digging. The narrow space below made digging extremely difficult. At their current pace, they estimated it would take another 3.5 years to reach the surface. One day, while resting, Edmond unintentionally discovered a secret about Abbé in one of his books. Abbé had once been a soldier, which immediately piqued Edmond's interest. He insisted that Abbé teach him swordsmanship or he would refuse to dig any further. Edmond's sole purpose was to one day avenge those who had wronged him. Reluctantly, Abbé agreed and began teaching him the art of combat. Emphasizing speed as the ultimate weapon, he taught Edmond to pass his hand through dripping water without getting wet. After finishing the lesson, Abbé resumed digging while Edmond practiced alone. After some training, Abbé removed wooden boards from the door to craft a makeshift sword and began seriously instructing Edmond. When the training ended, Edmond continued studying economics diligently. Edmond worked hard at both digging and learning, balancing both tasks seamlessly. After months of effort, Edmond's swordsmanship improved significantly. Abbé soon found himself unable to compete with Edmond's skills. One evening, during a casual conversation, Edmond learned that Abbé had once been the secretary to a noble family, the Stadias. Abbé's master had left behind a massive fortune, and Napoleon had imprisoned Abbé to force him to reveal the treasure's location. Edmond realized he too had been betrayed and imprisoned because of Napoleon. Their relentless digging brought them closer to victory, as Abbé discovered plant roots in the tunnel, indicating they were near the surface. Both were ecstatic as Edmond rushed back to grab a chisel, eager to witness the miracle. But before they could celebrate, disaster struck. Suddenly, the tunnel shook violently, followed by a deafening roar as it collapsed, burying Abbé alive. In a panic, Edmond frantically removed the rubble, desperately trying to save Abbé. He managed to pull Abbé out, only to find they had mistakenly dug into the wrong direction, as evidenced by a fallen tray from above. The sudden turn of events left Edmond heartbroken, but worse news followed. Abbé's lung had been crushed by a stone, and he was on the verge of death. In his dying moments, Abbé weakly instructed Edmond to retrieve something hidden beneath a stone under the book. Edmond uncovered a map that revealed the location of a treasure, leaving him in shock. Abbé urged Edmond to use the fortune for good and to avoid wrongdoing. Edmond solemnly promised, and Abbé drew his last breath. Tears streamed down Edmond's face as he felt the world collapse around him, leaving him utterly alone once again. Just then, the guards unexpectedly arrived to deliver dinner. Panicked, Edmond hid behind the wall as the guards called out impatiently. Receiving no response, they eventually peered into the cell and, upon seeing Abbé's lifeless body, hurried to report the situation. Edmond quickly covered the tunnel entrance and fled without delay. The guards returned with a body bag, displaying no compassion as they crudely stuffed Abbé inside. However, Edmond remained hidden in the tunnel, waiting for the guards to leave. Once the coast was clear, Edmond snuck back into the cell and stared at Abbé's body. A sudden, brilliant idea flashed through Edmond's mind like lightning, a plan so shocking it left him breathless. Not long after, the arrogant warden arrived at the cell with his entourage in tow. He coldly glanced at Abbé's corpse, thinking only of finishing the matter quickly. After all, this prison was on a desolate island, and the only option was to bury Abbé in the vast sea. However, at this critical moment, a guard came to Edmond's cell again to deliver food, but there was still no response. Panicked, the guard unlocked the cell door, anxiously preparing to check inside, only to find Edmond lying motionless on the ground. When the guard struggled to turn over Edmond's body, he was horrified to discover it was actually Abbé's corpse. The guard instantly realized something was wrong, and meanwhile, hidden inside the body bag was Edmond. Terrified, the guard shouted at the top of his lungs for the warden. By this time, they had unknowingly reached the edge of a cliff. In the midst of the chaos, the warden arrived in a rush, panicked and hurried, but the roaring wind and crashing waves drowned out all sound, and the warden couldn't hear a single word. In the critical moment, Edmond reached out and forcefully grabbed the warden's keys. With a burst of strength, he yanked the warden and himself off the cliff. As Edmond plunged into the sea, he struggled desperately, using all his strength to free himself from the body bag. Frantically, he unlocked the heavy lead ball chained to his feet with the warden's keys. After much effort, Edmond finally surfaced. To his surprise, when he turned around, he saw the warden. Years of pent-up rage erupted like a volcano. Furious, he swam swiftly towards the warden without hesitation. That day, Edmond finally had the chance to avenge the annual lashings he had endured. In a fierce struggle, Edmond pinned the warden underwater, drowning him without mercy. Then, without looking back, Edmond swam away into the vast sea. The next day, Edmond miraculously washed ashore, narrowly escaping death. But fate wasn't done with him yet. Before he could celebrate, he encountered a group of pirates. The atmosphere instantly turned tense and awkward. Unexpectedly, the pirate leader, Luigi, displayed a sense of gentlemanly decorum, stating it wouldn't be hard to let Edmond go. The condition was that Edmond must duel a traitor they were about to bury alive. If the traitor won, the pirates would take him back. If Edmond won, the traitor would be given a chance to survive. From Luigi's tone and expression, it was clear he was reluctant to lose the traitor, Jacopo. Under the watchful eyes of the pirates, they released Jacopo, and the two began an intense duel to the death. Who would have thought that Jacopo, who was regarded as a master swordsman by Luigi, couldn't even touch Edmond after several rounds? Clearly, the skills Edmond had learned from Abbé in prison were far from superficial. Seizing the moment, Edmond delivered a swift and decisive strike, knocking Jacopo to the ground. Yet, instead of killing Jacopo, Edmond pleaded earnestly with Luigi, vowing that both he and Jacopo would be valuable assets to Luigi's crew. Impressed by Edmond's skills, Luigi joyfully agreed to spare both of their lives. Little did anyone know, Jacopo would later repay this kindness by becoming Edmond's most loyal ally on his path to vengeance. Soon after, they arrived at a port where Luigi tossed Edmond a heavy bag of gold coins. Sensing Edmond's unfinished business, Luigi graciously allowed him to leave and pursue his goals. Without hesitation, Jacopo joined Edmond, becoming his inseparable companion. Edmond instructed Jacopo to secure a ship for a significant venture while he attended to some personal matters. Late that night, Edmond silently approached his old employer's house, but time had changed everything, and the old man's bewildered gaze failed to recognize Edmond. To Edmond's shock, he learned from the old man that his father had committed suicide out of grief after Edmond was falsely accused of treason. The news hit Edmond like a hammer to his heart. What enraged him even more was that the friend who had betrayed him had married his fiancée shortly after his imprisonment. Devastated, Edmond struggled to accept the harsh reality. The next day, he and Jacopo raised the sails with renewed determination. Their ship sped towards the location marked on the treasure map, and they passionately explored the island. They turned the island upside down but found no trace of the treasure. Just as despair began to set in, Edmond was struck by a sudden intuition. He felt there might be a hidden secret underwater. Without hesitation, he dove into the sea and swam towards the ocean floor. What he saw left him utterly speechless. Countless chests were tightly packed below. Opening one, he found it brimming with glittering gold coins. Jacopo, ecstatic, danced with joy and loaded the ship with as much gold as it could carry. Yet their small ship wasn't enough. They would need at least 8 more to transport everything. But Edmond felt no joy. The blood feud burning in his heart remained unresolved. The gold couldn't extinguish his hatred. Edmond resolved to use this fortune to begin his path of revenge. However, he didn't act impulsively. He started to plan meticulously. His first step was to purchase an estate and establish himself as a noble count. Soon after, he made a grand announcement, inviting all the notable dignitaries and aristocrats to visit his magnificent estate. Amid the crowd's admiration, Edmond basked in glory as he became the new Count of Monte Cristo, formally embarking on his path of vengeance. These elites and nobles were filled with curiosity about this newly risen count, each vying for an opportunity to associate with him. However, Edmond was disappointed when his former friend and betrayer, Count Fernand, abruptly left without meeting him. Edmond's fiancée, Mercédès, had married Fernand full of hope, but her life was far from the happiness she envisioned. Fernand turned out to be a compulsive gambler, indulging in hedonistic pleasures and squandering the family fortune until nothing remained. Fernand was now on the verge of financial ruin, with a massive loan from the bank due the next day. Edmond seized this perfect opportunity, quietly maneuvering behind the scenes to ensure that no shipping company would lend Fernand any assistance, cornering him into a desperate situation. With no other options, Fernand had to swallow his pride and seek help from a former accomplice in Edmond's betrayal. Ironically, this individual had now transformed into a respectable banker, unbeknownst to Fernand. This move played right into Edmond's trap. That day, Edmond's trusted ally, Jacopo, brought good news. Fernand had a son. Overjoyed, Edmond decided to use Fernand's son, Albert, as a secondary target for his plans. During the lively Roman carnival, Edmond skillfully orchestrated a scheme, using a beautiful woman to lure Albert away. He then deployed his formidable pirate allies to stage a fake kidnapping of Albert. At the critical moment, Edmond appeared as a heroic savior, seemingly descending from the heavens, and rescued Albert. Edmond's coordination with the pirates was flawless, creating a perfectly staged drama. This allowed Edmond to successfully befriend Albert and gain his trust. The next day, Edmond invited Albert to visit his estate. The two seemed to share certain similarities. Grateful for Edmond's heroic deed, Albert extended a warm invitation to him for his upcoming birthday celebration. Feigning busyness, Edmond initially declined the offer, appearing reluctant. Seeing Albert's sincerity, Edmond pretended to consult Jacopo about the status of a cargo ship. Jacopo, understanding Edmond's intent, revealed that the gold-laden ship would not arrive for another 3 weeks, conveniently aligning with Albert's birthday. This subtle hint was deliberately planted by Edmond. Albert's grand birthday party arrived as scheduled, and Edmond attended as promised. Proudly, Albert introduced Edmond to his father. This was Edmond's first face-to-face meeting with Fernand since being imprisoned 13 years ago. The hardships Edmond had endured had transformed him, and Fernand, clueless, failed to recognize him. However, when Mercédès saw Edmond, she froze, overwhelmed by a sense of familiarity mixed with estrangement, stirring complex emotions within her. Edmond, on the other hand, fought to suppress his emotions, ensuring he revealed nothing. During the banquet, an unexpected twist occurred when the prosecutor and his wife arrived uninvited. Fernand was taken aback, as they hadn't been in contact since Edmond's wrongful imprisonment. Unbeknownst to Fernand, the prosecutor had been invited by Edmond himself as part of his carefully crafted plan. Fernand signaled to the prosecutor for a private conversation. As they shared numerous dark secrets, Fernand disclosed information about the gold-laden cargo ship, suggesting the prosecutor use his position to detain the ship and split the loot. After some negotiation, they agreed to divide the gold equally. However, this secretive meeting caused Fernand to miss delivering his son's birthday speech. Seeing Mercédès standing awkwardly and at a loss, Edmond stepped in decisively to rescue the situation. He delivered a brilliantly crafted speech, ensuring Albert had a memorable and meaningful birthday. While Edmond conversed with the guests, a subtle gesture caught Mercédès' attention. In that instant, she realized the truth about Edmond's identity. After the banquet, Mercédès discreetly entered Edmond's carriage. When she saw him, her eyes filled with tears. Finally reuniting with the man she had longed for all these years, she revealed that Fernand had deceived her, claiming Edmond had been executed after his arrest. Heartbroken, Mercédès had wept bitterly, believing the man she loved was gone forever. Edmond, fearful that his carefully planned revenge would be jeopardized, forced himself to speak harsh words. Despite his inner turmoil, he sent Mercédès back home, knowing they could never return to the happiness they once shared. Meanwhile, Edmond's gold-laden cargo ship had been hijacked by the first mate and his crew. Before Fernand could arrive, Edmond instructed his pirates to secretly secure 2 crates of gold for themselves. Just as the first mate reveled in his apparent success, a squad of well-trained guards appeared, catching him red-handed. Unwilling to surrender, the first mate attempted to escape, only to be confronted by Edmond. Standing tall and resolute, the first mate fought back desperately, but but he was no match for Edmond. With swift precision, Edmond looped a strong rope around his neck, leaving him dangling between life and death. Before delivering the final blow, Edmond revealed his true identity, ensuring the first mate died fully aware of who had defeated him. Edmond's next target was the prosecutor. Years ago, Edmond had been tricked into unknowingly aiding Napoleon, delivering a letter that caught Fernand's attention. Fernand, coveting Edmond's fiancée, collaborated with the first mate to conspire against Edmond, informing the prosecutor of his actions. The unexpected twist was that the mysterious contact was none other than the prosecutor's father. To protect his hard-earned position, he wasted no time in severing ties with Napoleon. Ruthless and cold-hearted, he went so far as to convict Edmond of treason without a shred of evidence and exiled him to the dreaded Château d'If. What made it even more terrifying was that the prosecutor's father was, in fact, a staunch supporter of Napoleon. Fearing that his secret allegiance might be exposed and ruin his bright future, he conspired with Fernand to have his own father murdered. It wasn't until this moment that the prosecutor realized Edmond was the man who had been wrongfully imprisoned 13 years ago. As the saying goes, the net of justice is vast and unyielding. The prosecutor, weighed down by his countless crimes, was destined to face the heavy price of his misdeeds. His fate was sealed. Endless, miserable days in a pitch-dark prison awaited him. As he entered the prison carriage, defeated and broken, he found a gun placed on the seat. Resigned and despairing, the prosecutor prepared to take his own life with the firearm, only to discover it was an empty gun. Edmond, meticulous as ever, would never let him escape so easily. Instead, Edmond wanted the prosecutor to endure a lifetime of torment and suffering, a punishment worse than death. Meanwhile, Fernand, now bankrupt and desperate, panicked as he hastily packed to flee. But Mercédès, resolute, refused to join him in his escape. She delivered a shocking revelation to Fernand. The son he had raised as his own, Albert, was actually Edmond's child. After Edmond's arrest, Mercédès discovered she was pregnant and, out of desperation, had married Fernand. Although enraged, Fernand was too preoccupied with his escape to retaliate against Mercédès and Albert. He fled to a long-abandoned castle, where he had hidden the treasure chests he intercepted years ago. With great anticipation, Fernand opened the chests, only to find them filled with sand. A clever trick by Edmond to switch their contents. In a final act of desperation, Fernand opened the last chest, finding only a single chess piece, one Edmond had given him before his arrest. At that moment, Edmond appeared like a ghost. Fernand finally realized Edmond's true identity. Consumed by madness, Fernand drew his sword and charged at Edmond in a blind fury. But Fernand was no longer a match for Edmond, who effortlessly disarmed him and cornered him against the wall. As Edmond prepared to deliver the final blow, Albert suddenly intervened, slashing Edmond's sword in half and standing protectively in front of his father. Albert firmly declared he would not allow Edmond to harm his father. In the tense standoff, Fernand secretly loaded a gun, hoping for one last chance to strike. But Edmond, unwilling to hurt Albert, issued a stern warning: if Albert continued to interfere, he would show no mercy. At the critical moment, Mercédès arrived, successfully stopping Edmond. She then revealed Albert's true parentage, leaving Edmond stunned and speechless. Just then, Fernand aimed his gun at Edmond, but Jacopo, quick as lightning, threw a knife that knocked the gun from Fernand's hand. Unfortunately, Mercédès was hit in the shoulder by the stray shot. Seizing the chaos, Fernand fled in desperation. Yet, overwhelmed by the sight of Edmond's reunited family, Fernand abruptly stopped in his tracks. The thought of Edmond finding happiness was unbearable for Fernand, so he turned back, determined to take Edmond down with him. Though Edmond had intended to show mercy, Fernand's actions left him no choice. The two decided to settle their feud in a final duel. Fernand charged on horseback with unstoppable force, knocking Edmond's sword from his hand, but Fernand lost his balance and fell from his horse. The two men clashed like furious lions, grappling and fighting hand to hand. In the struggle, Fernand managed to retrieve a sword and wounded Edmond in the abdomen. Despite the pain, Edmond continued to fight, eventually disarming Fernand. In a last-ditch effort, Fernand dual-wielded swords, charging at Edmond with wild abandon. With remarkable agility, Edmond disarmed him barehanded and struck him down with a fatal blow, ending his life of crime. Having finally avenged his betrayal, Edmond took his wife and son to the prison where he had been held for 13 years. There, he paid solemn tribute to his mentor, Abbé. In a moment of reflection, Edmond vowed to use the remainder of his immense fortune for charitable deeds, fulfilling Abbé's dying wish. I'm a movie enthusiast. Please subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you next time.